Alright everybody, so I'm going to be going over this document that goes over Python, Django, and hosting it on Azure. This is the document provided by Fawad, and it should be on the Canvas page. If not, then I should upload it soon. So right off the bat, we're just gonna create a project folder. I think I already have that set up. Oh, let me close all of this crap. So first things first, we need to create this project folder, and I have that set up already. It's just a folder called demos that I have open. Yep. And then we want to create a virtual environment based on our current interpreter. Now remember, you probably had to do pip install virtual env, and then you'll have access to this command, I believe. And then you should be able to do this or one of these on Mac. You should be able to do python-m venv. I'm gonna name my environment something other than env, so I'm gonna do demo env. And then it'll take a little while and I'll skip to when it's done. Alright, you can see that it's finished, and if you do Shift Control P, Python interpreter, you can select interpreter, and then at the bottom over here, or well, you can see that something's appearing on the bottom, but you can also select an interpreter from up here, and I created this one, demo environment, and I'm going to click on that, and now what happens is that at the very bottom left you can see it's really small on this screen, but it says Python 3.7.1 demo environment. So you can see I created this integrated terminal before I made the environment and chose it. So now if I actually create a new terminal window, it automatically puts me into that environment in the terminal window. Alright, so now that we're in the environment, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do python-m pip install Django. Now, python-m pip install Django is the exact same thing as pip install Django. It's just that it specifies the version of Python a little bit better in case you have Python or Python. So now you can see it's just downloading and it's going to take a while. So I'll skip to when that's done. Alright, it finished, and I'm not going to care about upgrading pip right now. Now you can see that we can now start the Django app. So we should have went over this in class, but I'm going to go over it really quickly. Alright, so I made it a little bigger, and now I'm going to do Django admin start project. Let's name it demo project or something. So it created the files for me, and I have all of these initial files. And you can verify if it works. Probably works. So now we're going to create a simple Hello World application inside of our project. So I'm going to first cd into the demo project, and then I'm going to run python manage.py start app hello app. And you can see that made a new file. This shouldn't be anything really new. And then we're just going to take the rest of the code off of this document here. So inside the hello app /views.py, we're going to import HTTP response. And then we're also going to define the home page function. So HTTP response, and then we're going to define home page with request in here. Then return HTTP response, and let's just say hello world. Right, now we save that. Let's ignore that message, and then go to the hello app urls.py. So that that needs to be created, by the way. So let's new file urls.py, and then we just copy paste this entire thing. Hopefully that'll work. We'll save it. Shut up. And then we go back to the urls.py in the main file right here. And then we have a bunch of stuff here, but what we're also going to want to do is import the include file, and then do path of blank is going to redirect to include hello app.urls. So what this is going to do is it's going to include the hello app URLs file right here into this path. And this is the main path thing. So I can't really explain it any better than the documents can. So if you're confused about what this is doing, then I would suggest going to the documents. That this isn't the main part of the video. So now if you run python manage.py run server, you can see that there's an issue here. It says no module named hello, and we can see that the error is in hello app urls.py. So you can see that we imported it from hello, whereas it's actually hello app. So if we save it now and then we run it again, it should be running on the server now. So you can control click and it'll open it in Chrome. So I have it running here and you can see nice hello world. So it's really small, and that's our entire application that we're going to now deploy to Azure. So Control C to get out of that, and then let's go back to the documentation. So first, what we're going to do is generate a requirements.txt file. Now, if you're familiar with JavaScript and Node.js, NPM, all that stuff, requirements.txt is basically like a package.json. It tells you what dependencies are in this environment, so later when you put everything into a Docker image, it'll be able to install all of these dependencies instantly. So in here, I'm going to pip freeze requirements.txt. And now you can see it's generated this requirements.txt file. You can see there's Django, pytz, and SQL parse. Sure. So you can read up on what containers are and why they're important over here. But for the purpose of this video, I'm only going to be showing how to containerize it. So first, we're going to go over the Azure portal. You should have already made an Azure account, and you can get an education license thing for free, and it's free for students. You should have unlimited stuff for that, kind of. But yeah. And then in VS Code, this thing about code dot is it'll open VS Code in the folder that you're currently in. Not a huge deal, but if you're on a Mac, you have to actually go to this window by doing Shift Command P and then add code to path or something if you don't have access to the code command. And one last thing is that this C is supposed to be lowercase. So to get the Docker and Azure App Service extensions for VS Code, what you're going to want to do is go over here, click on this little square thing, and then do Docker, and then it should be like the first one that comes up. And then if you do Azure, just get all of the Azure tools. I think it'll just make your life a lot easier if you just get all of them. You'll want to just click on this install button, by the way. So after installing both Docker and Azure tools, I would suggest restarting VS Code, because I ran into an issue earlier where my Azure tools weren't loading correctly. And even though VS Code should allow hot swapping of extensions, it still required a restart for me to get the full functionality. So I would just suggest restarting right now. So now you're going to sign into Azure. All you have to do is click on the Azure sidebar here, and then there's going to be an option for you to log in. It's just prompting you for your username and password. That's all you have to. I think it's the same for Docker. You're going to want to make an account on Docker Hub, which should be free for you. So now that you downloaded and installed the Docker extension, you now have access to the Docker commands. So it is possible to do all this without any commands, but it's just convenient, I guess. So we're going to follow these steps. We're going to open the command palette and select Docker. Add Docker files to workspace. And then we're using Python, so let's do that. And our app listens on port 8000 because that's the default for Django. And it generated all these files. Now, right now I'm actually in a file outside of what it's supposed to be. So you actually want your Docker files to be inside your project. So I'm going to move all of these files into this demo project folder. If you started code in this demo project folder, then that's completely all right. all of these Docker files should be inside this demo project folder. I'm going to go over what these files are. Docker ignore is basically like when Docker is building your files into your container, you want to ignore certain files because inside your Docker file, you might have like this add./app, which adds all the files in the current directory to the /app of the Docker container. So if you want to ignore some things, for example, like the node modules folder, some of you may know that node modules can get as large as like 150 megabytes or even larger. So you want to ignore that because inside your Docker container, you're going to be installing that anyways. So it's just going to be repetitive and it's going to take forever if you don't ignore these. So you can see a nice Docker ignore file has automatically been generated here, but if you're starting a Docker file from like scratch, you're going to need to make your own Docker ignore file, and you're going to want to just double check that you're not doing some of these things. So Docker file is basically the thing that tells Docker like what's being built. You can see like from Python, it has a name, it exposes a certain port. So we're exposing 8000 from the thing that the Docker container is running. It has this work directory and all this stuff. It has some commands it runs. Docker Compose is used when you have more than one Docker file, I think. I've never actually used it, but that's because I've only made like single things. I'm sure it's useful for if you have multiple things that use Docker. So you can see that was just explained over here too, if you want a written explanation. So we're going to be using a different base image instead of the Alpine Python that we saw in this Docker file. Instead, we're going to be using this, and you can read about what it is. You can see it's just UW SGI with Nginx is a common way to deploy Python web apps, widely used. And so Fawad is using it for the purposes of this example. And you can read a little bit more about this. So now in our Django settings py file, we want to add to allowed host a list of hosts that we want to be able to run our app on. So this is similar to like Firebase, where you can change where you authenticate to be like localhost or your application. And for the purposes of testing, you're going to want to include localhost and this, but otherwise you would want to restrict it most likely to your final deploying domain. But for now, we actually don't quite know what our final deploying domain is yet, so let's just keep it empty for now and just do localhost. So you can also do 127.0.0.1. It's basically the same thing. So now we have to create this init file inside the project folder alongside manage.py. So we're going to be doing that. New file uwsgi.in. So we're just going to copy paste what he has here. So I'm going to insert it and I'm going to save it. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually replace this web project 1 with demo project. Copy and then paste. All right. So now this entire file is already ready, and we're going to modify the Docker file to have all these things. But he does give us a finalized Docker file to work from. So all I'm going to do is just copy paste all of this. You don't have to copy the comments. The comments don't matter. And I'm going to replace it all. So let's just do all of this and delete it, and then copy it and then paste it. All right. And now we have all of that ready. What we're going to change is nothing. So none of this should change. If you have this file set up, remember that all of your Docker files are out here next to manage.py. And also the requirements is next to manage.py. So now we're going to build and test the image. So Docker should be running on your computer. You can be able to tell that by going to the bottom right corner and seeing if Docker desktop is running, or on your Mac, it would be at the top right. So now on the VS Code command palette, we're going to select Docker build. So if we do Docker build image, you're going to see that we can name it something. So I'm going to name it demo project still, because I don't have anything named that. And you can see it's running a bunch of commands for me. And that very first command is actually the command that you would type into your command line if you wanted to build it without using the command prompt here. So this next bit should be a Windows only issue. If when you tried to run this line, there was an error that said execution of scripts is disabled on this system, what you want to do is actually open PowerShell, click on Run as Administrator, and then over here you can see that if you run this line, set execution policy, you can probably do remote signed, or what I did was I just did unrestricted, and then just click on yes to all, and then that should be all you need to do for this line to run. This line actually doesn't really matter that much, so don't worry about it if it doesn't run. As long as you see this, that it's successfully built and tagged something, you should be fine in terms of the Docker container. This security warning doesn't matter. So if you run the command docker ps-a, you can see a list of all of your applications that are running. So I already have an application that's currently running right now, so I'm going to be closing all of these. And you can exit out of them by doing docker remove. And the name of it is over here. So I'm going to make it a little smaller so that the names don't overlap to the next line. You can see that the name is automatically generated. It's 2 words. So this is Dazzling Arding Heli. And it's already running still, so you have to do force dash by doing -f. So now if you do docker ps-a, you can see that I only have these functions, and these are and these should be containers that have been exited already. So I'm just going to leave them there. So he says to go to this images over here and just click on run. So what I'm going to be doing is going to the Docker images, and you can see that my image over here is created. It's this demo project, and it's the latest one. So now I'm going to click on run just to make sure it runs. You can see the command it runs. It does docker run --rm -d-p, and then these ports, and then it has the latest. So to go through this line, docker run runs a Docker image. --rm means that if the Docker container exits, then it's going to remove itself from the container list that we saw with docker ps-a, right? At least I think that's what it does. -d is detached, meaning that when you run this command, it's going to not go into the terminal of this Docker container. -p443 is making it so that the port for HTTPS is being exposed. Now our app doesn't use HTTPS, so this line doesn't matter. Same for 80, except 80 is for HTTP. And we have port 8000 because our app runs on 8000. So once it runs this command, it generates this hash over here that's basically its ID, and it's now running in the background. So now if you see when you do docker ps-a, you get this over here. So let me just make it a little bit smaller. You can see that it's running this image, has this command over here. It was created 25 seconds ago. It's up 24, and it's forwarding port 80, port 443, and port 8000 to our device right now. So if we go to localhost 8000 now, you can see that our Hello World app is running. It's running from our Docker container. So our Docker container is isolating this application and it's running it on port 8000 within this application. And then it's exposing that 8000 port to our computer's 8000 port, and it's running the app on our computer. So it's allowing our 8000 port to tap into the Docker container itself. So now we're going to push the image to the registry. So to create an Azure container registry, all you really have to do is go over here, create a resource, go to containers, container registry, and then you can enter a name. All I'm going to do is like wquac-demo.azure.cr.io or something. And then for subscription, I'm going to go to Azure for Students, not the free trial, by the way. Resource group, I'm going to create a new resource group, and I'm going to name it Docker Demo. And then location, I'm on the West Coast right now, so I'm going to do West. Admin user, don't think that matters, and I'm just going to use the standard. And so when you click on create, it's going to load in and try to create it. You can see deployment in process. And for now, I'm just going to go on to the next thing while this happens. Oh, so now it says deployment succeeded. You can go to the resource and see stuff about it. So once your app's been created, you can log into it. You can log into the registry using the Azure CLI. Now I already have the CLI installed, but you can just do install Azure CLI and you can find it immediately. So I'm going to run az cmd acr login -- name wquac demo. And then you can see that login succeeded. So now we can push to this wquac demo.azurecr.io. So this fkcr1.azurecr.io, I'm going to replace it with my own, which is wquac demo.azurecr.io. And then, so what I'm going to do is go here. I'm going to delete the word, insert it, and paste. So I think this is how you do it. You add your Docker container name here, and then your link here. And then you should be able to just run Docker Compose up. And then choose the regular one, not the default one. So there was an error where this was running, I think. So I'm going to close it and I'm going to try to Docker Compose it again. And you can see that it ran and it's all working, which is nice. And it's actually, it started it up automatically for me. So that was what the error was. So over here, if we refresh, you can see that it's still running, which is nice. It's the composed one, by the way. All right, so now we can push this to the repository. So if we push, we can now see that it's pushing to this container repository that we created. And now you can see that it's been uploaded to that container repository. So if we go to the Azure now, and then we go to our app service. So now that we finished pushing it, we can now deploy the image to Azure. So what we're going to want to do is go into our Docker and then go into registries. Let's hide images for now. Go to Azure, and then you can see this wquac demo azure. And you can see this is empty right now, which is an issue. So let's actually reload the window because sometimes it bugs out, which is really stupid. But now once this loads, so you can see there's this demo project here. So if we open it up, you can see it's the project that we just pushed. So now if we deploy the image to Azure App Service, we can pick one of these. So we're going to use Azure for Students. And we created the resource group, which was Docker Demo. And new app service plan, don't think this really matters, so let's do docker demo service plan. And let's just do a standard service plan. And now we're going to enter a globally unique name for the web app. Now this is going to be part of the link. So let's just do wquack demo. So you can see that Azure App Service only supports running images from container registries with admin enabled. So to fix that, what we're going to do is go back here to the Azure thing, go to Overview, go to Update, and then you can see admin user enabled or disabled. Right now it's disabled, so I'm going to enable it and save it. So I had to refresh and then be able to run it, which is pretty dumb, but if it doesn't work, a refresh will do it. I refreshed Visual Studio. So now you can see that new web app in subscription, blah, 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 creating new web app, blah, blah, blah. So now we wait. So you can see now that our website is ready. So if we try to run this, so you can see that when we actually go to it, it's just a blank page. Right now it's like infinitely loading. It's not really loading anything. And this is because we still haven't done a step that we're supposed to do, which is go to this website's port and set it to 8000. So what you want to do is go to Azure here, wait for it to load the app service. Once it loads this app service, go open your app. You can see wquack demo, that's the one I made. And then under application settings, right click and add a new setting. And then you can see it's websites port. So websites underscore port. And then let's set that to 8000. And then once you set that, it should automatically restart, but let's just give it a kick anyways. So now if you go over here and you try to refresh, after a little bit, it should open up an application for you. So it's been a while and still not loading, so I'm just going to go back and give it another kick on the over here. Let's just restart it. Yes. Okay, and it says it successfully restarted, so let's go to the link again. All right, and now you can see our app is finally running. So you can see it's disallowed host. Now why is this? It's because we didn't include this over here to our allowed hosts. So if we go back to our settings.py, we have our link here. Let's just add it in. So now we have that. Let's also add a comma there. And now we've updated it, so we're ready to rebuild and redeploy. So if we go back and we Docker compose up again, and we compose using this, it'll run it all and compose it, build it. We just changed one part, so it's going to be quick to build it again. So now that it's built, let's go back to Docker here. Let's go to our images, and it's this image. And now let's just push it again. And now it's been pushed to the repository. So now if you read this document here, it says that if you restart the app, it automatically pulls in new Docker changes. So I'm going to go over here and click on this restart. Now it should be restarted. And now if you go to the page, you should see this hello world now. So now you've learned how to take your old container, modify something, rebuild it, and then push it and deploy it to the actual website. So yeah, that's all for this tutorial. Hopefully you've learned something. Hopefully it was really helpful. Let Adele or I know if you have any questions, and we'd be happy to take them and answer them. Yeah.